The Senate will come to order. Senator Merrifield.
Members and guests, please join me in pledging the allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Majors, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar, Baumgartner, Carroll, Cook, Crowder, Donovan, Garcia, Grantham, Guzman, Heath, Hill, Hodge, Holbert, John, Johnston, Jones, Kafalis, Kerr, Lambert, Lundberg, Marble, Martinez-Humanic, Merrifield, Neville, Newell, Roberts, Scheffel, Scott, Sonnenberg, Stedman, Tate, Todd, Ulibarri, Woods, Mr. President.
Here, with 35 present, 0 absent, 0 excused, we have a quorum. Senator Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the reading of the journal from Monday, February 22nd be dispensed with and the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted and the journal is approved. Reports of committees of reference.
February 22nd, 2016, Committee on Business, Labor, Technology, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 71 be postponed indefinitely. February 22nd, 2016, Committee on Business, Labor, Technology, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1084 be referred to the Committee of the Whole, favorable recommendation, with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. February 22nd, 2016, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 13 be amended as follows and as so amended, prefer the Committee of the Whole, favorable recommendation. February 22nd, 2016, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 98 be postponed indefinitely. February 22nd, 2016, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 103 be postponed indefinitely. February 22nd, 2016, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1033 be referred favorably to Committee on Appropriations. February 22nd, 2016, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1057 be referred to the Committee of the Whole, favorable recommendation, with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar.
Senate Services.
February 23, 2016, correctly gross Senate Bill 1748 and 110, Senate Joint Memorial 4, correctly re-engrossed Senate Bill 70, 79, and 88, correctly re-revised House Bills 1053 and 1069.
Third reading of bills, consent calendar. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of the bills on the third reading of bills, consent calendar?
Senate Bill 110 by Senator Woods, Representative Lundin, concerning protecting the privacy of child victims when releasing criminal justice records.
Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate adopt the bill listed on the third reading of bills for final passage consent calendar, which includes one bill, Senate Bill 110.
You have heard the motion. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 110 is adopted. Co-sponsors, Majority Leader Scheffel, Senator Lambert, Senator Kafalis, Senator Holbert, Senator Newell, Senator Hill, Senator Crowder, Senator Marble, Minority Leader Guzman, Senator Lundberg, Senator Todd, Senator Baumgartner, Senator Roberts, Senator Grantham, Senator Neville, Senator Heath, Senator John, Senator Merrifield, Senator Scott, Senator Aguilar, Senator Cook, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Martinez-Humenick, please add the President. Colleagues, I want to share with you, since we are on third readings, Rule 25. After the introduction of a bill, a member's name may be added or removed as a co-sponsor thereof only if such member immediately following the adoption thereof on third reading rises and requests that member's name be added or removed as co-sponsors. This clarifies, actually corrects a practice that we have engaged in for some time. And I even mentioned it yesterday that if you missed being called as a co-sponsor, that you could let the secretary know. The rule clears that up, so we're going to follow the rule until such time as that rule is changed. So co-sponsors appropriately after third reading is the time to be added or removed. Thank you, Madam Secretary. That'll be $5 for correcting the president. Education is going to cost somebody something. Third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title of House Bill 1240?
House Bill 1240 by Representative Hamner, Senator Lambert, concerning a supplemental appropriation in the Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1240 on third reading, and I'd like to have a brief explanation of what happened to this bill.
Please.
Members, we held this up for a couple of days. We had some information that some services for children between I think it was 5 and 18 years old, were not being provided to some of the CCBs. They'd applied for some services for children who, by policy, are not supposed to be kept on a waiting list. We held this up for a few days to see if we needed to add any information to the supplemental or make any budget changes to make sure that this was not a budget problem. We've talked with the department, found out it's not a budget problem, but we are going to be looking at it more closely and handling the problem if we can discover it on during figure setting. So right now, it's not necessarily necessary that we hold up the supplemental. It's fine for it to go forward. So I'd ask for an aye vote on House Bill 1240.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1240 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1240 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Aguilar? Senator Newell? Please add the President. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 48?
Senate Bill 48 by Senator Marble and Representative Sane and Salazar, concerning requiring federal regulatory agencies to provide notice before using special units to conduct operations within the state.
Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of Senate Bill 48 on third reading and final passage and request a roll call vote.
The motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 48 on third reading and final passage. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, a roll call has been requested. Mr. Majors, would you please poll the senators?
Senators Aguilar. Aguilar, no. Baumgardner. Baumgardner, aye. Carroll. Carroll, no. Cook. Cook, aye. Crowder. Crowder, aye. Donovan. Donovan, no. Garcia. Garcia, no. Grantham. Grantham, aye. Guzman. Guzman, aye. Heath. Heath, no. Hill. Hill, aye. Hodge. Hodge, no. Holbert. Holbert, aye. John. John, no. Johnston. Johnston, no. Jones. Jones, no. Kafalis. Kafalis, aye. Kerr. Kerr, no. Lambert. Lambert, aye. Lundberg. Lundberg, aye. Marble. Marble, aye. Martinez Humenic. Martinez Humenic, aye. Merrifield. Merrifield, no. Neville. Neville, aye. Newell. Newell, no. Roberts. Roberts, aye. Sheffel. Sheffel, aye. Scott. Scott, aye. Sonnenberg. Sonnenberg, aye. Stedman. Stedman, aye. Tate. Tate, aye. Todd. Todd, no. Ulibarri. Ulibarri, aye. Woods. Woods, aye. Mr. President.
Aye.
Mr. President, aye.
With 22 ayes, 13 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 48 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Holbert, Senator Lambert, Senator Neville, Senator Lundberg, Senator Crowder, Majority Leader Sheffel, Senator Baumgartner, Senator Grantham, Senator Woods, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Scott, Senator Hill, please add the President. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 17?
Senate Bill 17 by Senator Neville and Representative Neville concerning allowing a law-abiding person to carry a concealed handgun without a permit in connection with preserving current laws restricting the carrying of concealed handguns on certain property, including school grounds, and reducing an appropriation.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 17 on third reading and ask for a favorable vote. Colleagues, constitutional carry is a basic principle that we've talked about for several days here. Basic principle that if you're legally eligible to possess a firearm, and of course in Colorado, open carry that, you should be able to carry that weapon concealed for self-defense without begging for government permission. So law-abiding people shouldn't be forced to get a government permit before they can exercise their right to self-defense. I urge an aye vote.
Is there further discussion? Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the sponsor. Apologies, I didn't come to the well yesterday. I was in the midst of working on another bill, and conversation closed more quickly than I thought it would, and so I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts today on this important conversation as it closes. I do think there are two questions before the body today. One is this proposal constitutional? And the second is this proposal good policy? And I think on the question of whether or not it is a constitutional right to be able to have a concealed carry without a permit, I think the Supreme Court is incredibly clear. My friend from Colorado Springs quoted Justice Scalia's opinion in the Heller decision, where he said clearly, like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. The right was not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever in any manner whatsoever and for whatever purpose. Specifically, prohibitions on carrying concealed weapons were lawful under the Second Amendment. That means a straight prohibition on carry would be lawful, not to mention a simple requirement of earning a license. So given that there is not a question of the constitutionality of this decision, there is just a question of whether or not this is good policy. and here too I think I may differ from folks on both sides of this aisle. I am a gun owner. I have been since I was in the 8th grade. And I also share the belief that well-trained people carrying firearms in public spaces can make us safer. I do believe that's possible. I think air marshals are a great example of that. Right? Some place where we all have decided that people with firearms who are well-trained can make a difference. I also am someone that believes and has the lessons to show that not all people are well-trained in how to use firearms. And when they are not, the dangers there are catastrophic. When we started this debate last week, I left this chamber last Wednesday to go to a wake for a former student of mine, 22 years old, student at CSU, late in the night, playing games with a firearm, took out the clip, thought he'd pretend to put it up against his head, not realizing there was still a bullet in the chamber, and killed himself with 3 of his best friends in the room with him. Those decisions are costly when you make mistakes for not being well trained. So what does that have to do with the right to concealed carry? I would argue this is not at all about the right to a concealed carry. Members said very eloquently, it's clear that someone has the right to open carry. It's clear that someone has the right to possess it. The question is the right to open carry the same as the right to concealed carry? And I would say not, because the difference is it is about the public's right to know whether or not you are carrying a loaded weapon or not. In an open carry state, certainly. If you walk up and I see you from 20 yards away, I know you have a gun on your holster. I know how to interact with you because I know you are carrying a loaded and dangerous weapon. Think about the first day that we debated this bill. The first day that we debated in this bill, parents from all over the state sent to this Capitol their gifted and talented children. And every single one of those gifted and talented children sat next to one of us in this chamber. How many of those kids or how many of those parents knew that their child was sitting 2 feet away from a loaded firearm? I'm sure there were folks in this chamber that day who were carrying. And actually, I am okay with that. Why? Because the people that were carrying that day have demonstrated to the state of Colorado that they have the skills, the safety, and the training to carry a concealed weapon, even in this chamber, even with a stranger's child sitting next to you, because you have the responsibility and the knowledge and the wisdom to guard that weapon in a way that it's not going to be a danger. Imagine this bill passes and look 10 years into the future. We're all gone. There's a new set of members here, and it's Gifted and Talented Day again. And you're setting your child or your grandchild to come sit in this chamber next to a senator she doesn't know, who may or may not be carrying a concealed weapon, but has never actually taken any course in public safety to know how to use that firearm. Would you want to send your child to sit next to someone who might not even know how to operate the safety, who might forget after the end of a long day and take their jacket off and drop it on the table, not realizing they left the safety off? Right? That is the key distinction. Right? You think about dogs. What is more American than dogs? Right? My kids love dogs. And every dog they see, all they want to do is run up and hug the dog as quickly as they can. You teach your children when they're young, most dogs are wonderful. There are occasionally dogs who are angry or who don't like to be cornered or who don't like small children. And so you teach them always to stop and ask, may I pet your dog, before they do it. In the same way you would teach them to not run up and hug a stranger or because you don't know if they are or are not carrying a firearm. When someone has the training, they know how to make the decisions to assume that someone like me might come up to you in the chamber and give you a big pat on the back or give you a big bear hug when you're carrying a firearm. But you're smart enough to know how to prepare for that and make sure that someone unsuspected like me, not knowing that you're carrying a firearm, may do that. We talked the last time we had this big debate about the Dave Grossman piece, which I know folks on this side of the aisle will remember, which is a famous piece about gun rights, which says there are 3 types of folks in the world. There are sheeps, and there are wolves, and there are sheepdogs. And his argument is that those folks who carry weapons, and particularly who carry concealed weapons, are the sheepdogs. They are the folks who are out there trying to protect the rest of us from the wolves. I don't disagree with that. But I think the question that raises is that what we have done with a concealed carry license is we have created a special class of citizens that we believe can make Colorado safer by being well-trained and well-prepared to enter public spaces with that training. We are essentially restarting the well-regulated militia that was envisioned in the Second Amendment. Except for instead of creating that militia to fight against foreign powers, we are creating that militia to fight against domestic terror or domestic violence. Right? But the reason why we believe is we make a basic agreement that we will risk public safety by having more firearms out in the street in exchange to protect public safety by ensuring that those people are well-trained and are going to cause us more protection than harm. I believe by removing that, you do harm to the idea of concealed carry. You do harm to a class of Colorado citizens who have stepped up to be protectors by allowing folks who are unqualified to join their ranks. There are many ways to get a concealed carry permit. Taking the class is only one. Do you know what the others are? The others are, you are an active duty member of the U.S. military. No need for a license. You get a permit automatically. You are an active member of law enforcement. You are a retired member of the U.S. military, or you are a retired member of law enforcement. That's because the state has recognized if you have already taken the oath to be a protector in this state, if you have already signed up to be a sheepdog, you have earned the right to carry a permit. If you haven't, we ought to know at least that you have some basic competence in the skills of a firearm if you're going to carry a weapon that's that dangerous. I think to pass Senate Bill 17 would be a disrespect to those folks who have signed up to protect this state. I think that passing Senate Bill 17, you will be allowing wolves to come in and dress as sheepdogs in the public spaces we've tried so hard to keep safe. I'd ask for a no vote.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I appreciate the words from my colleague from Denver, and I appreciate his support of armed citizens out there making a difference in our society. I always listen and like to hear that, especially from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. We don't hear that enough, so that's appreciated. However, I have to disagree with the idea that we are having to create a special class of people to exercise your right to keep and bear arms. I disagree with that entirely. I believe that it's time that we allow people to exercise their constitutional rights, and yes, and I'm talking about the U.S. Constitution, their rights to defend their family, their treasure, their loved ones. And I have some agreement on this from, I think, a source that I believe we all respect, and that is our Colorado sheriffs, those that are elected by the citizens to do exactly that. I don't believe our friends that are Colorado sheriffs would be in agreement. They don't believe that putting folks in an opportunity to carry a concealed weapon without having to create a permit is a danger. They agree with this bill. They've supported this bill. I ask you to support it also and allow people to exercise their constitutional rights. I urge an aye vote.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. On third reading, generally, I don't come down here unless somebody starts talking about their bill. If they just move it, I let it go. And I was going to do that today, but that's not what happened. So I disagree with the person that spoke a little earlier. I think 3 hours of training is not well regulated. The people on Concord Green who drilled week in, week out would say the same thing. So we barely have enough protections as it is now. And this whole notion of it making us safer, I find illogical. I offered an amendment yesterday that said, hey, if anything goes wrong, you're responsible. And people said no. And by doing that, when those people in this chamber said no, they admitted, at least to me, that this is not safer. It is less safe. Even if you have the permit and the 3 hours of training, which is nothing, really. And the Minutemen would probably agree with that. So this does not make us carrying concealed does not make us safer. Not having to have that minimum of 3 hours of training makes us less safe still. And so I ask for a no vote on this bill. I just think this is one more step for people who don't know how to use a firearm to carry around a firearm and put themselves and their neighbors at risk. So I ask for a no vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 17 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Minority Leader Guzman, Senator Heath, Senator Kafalis, Senator Jones, Senator Ulibarri, Senator Carroll, Senator John, Senator Garcia, Senator Merrifield, Senator Todd, Senator Hodge, Senator Stedman, Senator Newell, Senator Kerr, Senator Donovan, Senator Johnston, Senator Aguilar. With 18 ayes, 17 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 17 is adopted. Co-sponsors, Mr. Majority Leader, Senator Lundberg, Senator Holbert, Senator Lambert, Senator Cook, Senator Marble, Senator Hill, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Grantham, Senator Neville. Wait, you're on the, sorry. Senator Woods, Senator Scott. You don't want to co-sponsor your bill? Senator Baumgartner. Please have the president. General orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Majority Leader Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that Senate Bill 125 be removed from the general order second reading of bills consent calendar and be made part of the general order's second reading of bills calendar.
Senate Bill 125 will be removed as requested by the Majority Leader from the consent calendar and placed on the general order's second reading of bills calendar. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of General Order's second reading of bills consent calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of General Order's second reading of bills consent calendar. Senator Holbert will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. The Colt rule is relaxed. Mr. Majors, would you please read the titles of all of the bills listed on the General Order second reading of bills consent calendar?
House Bill 1041 by Representative Lebsack and Senator Holbert concerning the removal of unreasonably impractical financial requirements applicable to marijuana businesses that are required to be licensed. House Bill 1049 by Representative Lee and Senators Sheffel and Hill concerning an escrow account held by a depository institution on behalf of an issuer of an intrastate offering of securities. House Bill 1081 by Representatives Ransom and Esgar and Senators Lundberg and Newell concerning removing obsolete reporting provisions in the entitled 25.5 of the Colorado Revised Statutes.
Majority Leader Sheffel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the committee adopt all the bills listed on the general order second reading of bills consent calendar, which includes House Bill 1041, House Bill 1049, and House Bill 1081. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion on any of the bills listed on the General Order's second reading of bills consent calendar? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of all of the bills listed on the consent calendar. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bills are adopted. Majority Leader Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is to rise and report. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Mr. Majors, would you please read the report?
February 23rd, 2016, Mr. President, your committee of the whole basically reports that in consideration of the following tax bills being second reading thereof makes following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1041, House Bill 1049, House Bill 1081, passed on second reading in order to revise, placed on the counter for third reading and final passage.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the report.
You have heard the motion. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. House Bill 1041, House Bill 1049, House Bill 1081 passed on second reading and ordered, revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. General orders, second reading of bills. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general orders, second reading of bills calendar.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of general orders, second reading of bills. Senator Holbert will take the chair.
The committee will come to order, Mr. Majors, and the court rule is relaxed. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 34?
Senate Bill 34 by Senator Sonnenberg concerning tampering with the deceased human body.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I move Senate Bill 34, and I don't believe there is a committee report.
There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read L007?
Amendment L007, Senate Bill 34 by Senator Sonnenberg, amendment printed bill page 3, strike lines 2 through 14, substitute print 2, tampering with the deceased human body is a class 3 felony.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L007, and L007 takes away any of the confusion, just makes tampering with the deceased body a class 3 felony, takes away the graduated scale that we had talked about, which seemed to be causing some heartburn. Ask for a yes vote.
Is there further discussion on L007? Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering how the class 3 felony that you're proposing compares to the penalties in current law?
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I honestly don't know. The class 3 felony would be consistent. The penalties would be consistent for any class 3 felony.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, to the sponsor, it's my understanding that one of the reasons for the bill is that the current penalty for tampering with evidence is insufficient for the crime that this bill concerns. And so I believe you are proposing, and the bill would enact, a more serious felony offense than under current law. And so I was hoping you could explain to the body how many more years in DOC someone would be sentenced to, and perhaps what the fiscal impact of this law might be, given that Section 2-2-703 of the Colorado Revised Statutes requires all bills that increase criminal sentencing to have 5-year statutory appropriations, and particular things happen in their fiscal note process. And with this Class 3 felony, I'm wondering if we've been through that process.
Are you at the end?
Senator Johnson.
Do you want to respond? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the sponsor for his work on this yesterday. I think there were 3 basic issues that were raised at this well last week. I think the sponsor fixed all 3 of them in good faith. The first one was to make sure that there wasn't a distinction between whether or not the crime was charged or not. So if you tamper with the body, you are liable for that crime whether or not you eventually charge the underlying crime or not. That's been changed. The second was to clear up the escalator so you wouldn't have someone who could potentially get different charges for tampering with the same body based on different outcomes of the underlying crime. The third was to make sure that there was a requirement that there was intent from the person who damaged this body to actually interfere with an investigation. So your hypothetical Stand By Me moment where kids come across a body in the wilderness and they poke it with a stick a couple times, not intending to thwart a federal investigation, would not be charged with a felony. The sponsor fixed all 3 of those. I think created a quite elegant solution on this one, so I think it's a good bill. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the sponsor could remind us what a Class 3 felony is, the sentencing range. It just seems to me to be on the high end, but I'm not sure. If you could tell us what that is.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know the details for the minimum and maximum of a Class 3 felony. I can tell you that when we had the discussion with my good friends over here that we're talking about it, Class 3 felony seemed to be the one that we had talked about and that we agreed on. Actually, there was talk in committee of a Class 2 felony, but Class 3 seemed to make more sense, so that's what we settled on. I will tell you with regard to the fiscal note, I don't believe the fiscal note changes much as far as the Department of Corrections. In the current fiscal note, it says Department of Corrections may experience an increase in costs if individuals who tamper with human remains receive longer sentences. To the extent a bad impact to DOC occurs, the fiscal note assumes it will be addressed through the annual budget process. I can tell you, thank you very much, and I have no idea who brought this up to me as I sat in here. A Class 3 felony, the penalties and fines are from $3,000 to $750,000, and penalties for imprisonment are 4 to 12 years.
Is there further discussion on L007? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L007 to Senate Bill 34. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. To the bill, Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've had this discussion on the bill before. I told you the need for the bill and the issues with it. Rather than belabor the point and repeat myself from the other day, I would just ask that you do what you can to help victims of missing people and vote yes.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 34? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of Senate Bill 34. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 34 is adopted. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 80?
Senate Bill 80 by Senator Newell concerning secured marijuana cultivation requirements.
Majority Leader Scheffel.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee lay over Senate Bill 80 to February 24.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 80 to February 24th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill will be laid over to February 24th. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 7?
Senate Bill 7 by Senator Roberts concerning the establishment of a multiplier in the renewable energy standard for electricity generated from certain types of biomass to provide an incentive to use materials located within areas that have a high risk of wildfire.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 7 and the Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the Ag Committee, what we did was fine-tuned the biochar component, which I'll be happy to explain in greater detail, but we wanted to make sure that the biochar produced by these biomass projects would be of a certain quality, so that's what we adopted.
Is there further discussion on the Agriculture Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. To the bill. Senator Roberts. There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read L003?
Amendment L003 to Senate Bill 7 by Senator Roberts, amend the Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy Committee report dated February 11, 2016, page 1, strike lines 2 and 3, and substitute page
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L003.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I did here was I got some feedback that perhaps the map that was used in the original bill draft was not as good as one that is in Amendment L003. In the original bill, I used a map that is created by the U.S. Forest Service, but it's not regularly updated and not Colorado specific. So talking with the Colorado State Forest Service, we found another alternative which would be similar in terms of identifying the high or very high wildfire risk areas in Colorado that would be applicable to the bill, but again, it's a switch in the maps used.
Is there further discussion on L003? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L003 to Senate Bill 7. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. To the bill, Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to read a little poem that I think goes to the heart of this bill. And the title of the poem is Trees by Joyce Kilmer from 1913. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the sweet earth's flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. I read that poem because I want you to know that Senate Bill 7 is an ode to trees of my own type. And by that, what I mean is Senate Bill 7 allows the renewable energy standards multiplier that's been used in other renewable energy efforts. It applies now to biomass projects under Senate Bill 7, but in very limited circumstances. I mentioned earlier a map. This would allow the multiplier to apply to biomass projects in a high fire risk area for a limited period of time of 30 years. It is about public safety. It is about reducing the risk of catastrophic wildfires in the wildland-urban interface, so it's not a broad brush. Again, very targeted. It is about forest health. We know if you drive around the state, and I know everybody here has seen the condition of our forests, and it's taking an action step, moving forward on improving our forest health. It's about watershed protection. We had 2 different water districts speak up in favor of this bill in the Agricultural Committee because our water is tied intimately with our forest health. So whether you're urban Coloradan or out in the rural areas, watershed protection is a key component of this bill. This bill also allows the full use of a resource that presently is just sitting out there rotting, waiting to be fuel for a wildfire. It's taking the biomass And by biomass, I'm talking about trees of small diameter, 10 inches or less, and brush. So kind of trash wood, if you want to call it that. But what is choking our forest today, right now, laying on the floor, waiting to be burned by a wildfire. I'm also talking about Senate Bill 7 that brings economic benefits to communities, particularly in rural Colorado. We certainly heard at the start of this session how there's a focus of bringing jobs to rural Colorado, and this bill would help do that. It's been demonstrated in Gypsum. It is waiting to be demonstrated in Pagosa Springs, Colorado, in my district. It's strongly supported by Club 20, which is both about the economic development and the forest health. Senate Bill 7 also brings the benefits of biochar. Biochar is what is left once the wood is gasified in these small projects. It leaves something like charcoal. As I mentioned earlier, we had an amendment in the Agricultural Committee that raised the quality of biochar that would qualify for this multiplier to the kind of biochar that can be used as a soil additive all across the state of Colorado, which really will help increase the nutrient levels in the soil and help with agricultural production. So Senate Bill 7 is to move to an action step in a very serious way. It's about taking a resource that currently is rotting or waiting to be part of a wildfire and moving it to electricity in a small 3 to 5 megawatt operation in many of our small rural communities currently threatened by wildfire. And I urge your support of Senate Bill 7.
Senator Jones.
Did you already do the amendment? Okay.
We are to the bill, Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I like to hear that ode to a tree, although we're cutting them down. I plead guilty. I've done that in mitigation work. Yeah, we do have a forest health problem in this state. We have way too many trees, and the pictures they handed out in committee are ponderosa pine forest, which is what they used to look like before we suppressed fire and made them much more fire prone. I don't know if you've ever seen a fire history study in Colorado, but about 1910, so you look at the number of fires, it goes along, your Americans come along, and then boom, it hits the floor. And that's what we did in 1910 after the big blow up in Montana and Idaho, where they burned 1 million acres of trees in a day. And they instilled a 10 o'clock rule where people would go and try to put the fire out by the next day at 10 o'clock. They were very successful, but now we have a huge problem of this fuel. So I agree there's a problem with that. I don't think this is a solution to that problem. I think under the renewable energy standard, we did give some 3-to-1 preferences for solar, and those are no longer around anymore. And what this might do, and this is my concern, is that it might push aside other renewables that, for me, are a little bit more important. And so I'd ask for a no vote on this bill. I agree with its intent. I don't think this is the way to go to give them a 3-to-1. They are eligible for a 1-to-1 benefit right now, just like solar, just like wind, just like geothermal. All those things are eligible on an equal basis, and I think we should keep it that way, so I ask for a no vote.
Senator Baumgardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I rise in support of Senate Bill 7. We heard earlier some of the benefits to this bill. It would reduce intense fires by taking these trees, clearing them out. The overcrowding of the ponderosa forest has introduced we have intense fires when that happens, and basically what that does is when that burns, it burns so hot, it sterilizes the soil and holds the growth down. So with this being moved forward, this biomass bill, it allows for new growth to take place in the high-risk fire zones, and when these are thinned and take out the dead small diameter trees in the brush. The underbrush is then removed, no longer competing with the same sunshine and water that the new healthy growth needs to go forward. I was also spoke a little bit about watershed protection, which is critical to Colorado to have a healthy forest for both water quality and accurate water quantity. Healthy forests help retain water in higher elevations longer, prolongs a more measured spring runoff, and reduces soil erosion. It treats our forests as natural, currently available reservoirs. So again, this is something for a healthy forest in Colorado and water, our water for here in the state. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too rise in support of Senate Bill 7. We heard about the 3 times multiplier, and is it a factor and justified? Well, I say yes, it is. The multiplier that has been used successfully by the solar industry to become more economically viable has been beneficial to them. It helped them out. Let's give biomass the same opportunity. Let's give them the same chance we gave solar. Let's talk about renewable energies and not preferred energy of just solar. Senate Bill 7 projects must produce high-quality biochar which can be placed in the soil in every part of Colorado. So farmers throughout the eastern plains and on the western slopes can use this highly nutrient fertilizer for nutrients in their farms. Colorado has more ties to the biochar than most states, and using biochar as a soil additive seems the most promising approach to the carbon dioxide removal. Senate Bill 7 fits all the rationale for the 4 past renewable energy standard multipliers, and it will not reduce total renewables at all. We will easily meet our 30% renewable goal. So I rise in support.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 7? Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, a few years back, we had a pretty devastating fire in my area, if those of you remember the Lower North Fork fire. And of course, that wasn't caused by people failing to mitigate their properties. It was caused by basically an issue with out-of-control growth and a problem that was next door to those people, actually on Denver Water Board land, and involved our state Forestry Service at the time, too. I rise in support of this bill because anything that encourages better better forest management, particularly from those within the governmental agencies, will help protect those people in the wildlife-urban interface that are my constituents. I urge a yes vote on Senate Bill 7.
Is there further discussion? Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to also mention that the Colorado Timber Industry Association's members employ or contract with 1,200 workers to produce products valued at more than $50 million annually. An additional 5,000 Coloradans are employed by secondary wood products and paper manufacturers and bring to the industry's economic value to over $950 million annually. So again, if what we're talking about are jobs in rural Colorado, this is exactly a pathway there. The last thing I'd like to mention related to this bill is we have just in recent years received a lot of reports from all sorts of state agencies and other interested people, and I just want to remind us of those. So one of the more dramatic, it was the special report, Colorado Firefighting Air Corps from March 2014, and we talked about the huge investment that was needed for fire suppression by the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control. Very, very worthy to be on your desk report because we're not beyond that. I want to talk about the Colorado's water plan that just came out this fall from the executive order that the governor put out, and we spent 2 years working on Colorado's water plan. On page 16 of that report talks about watershed health, environment, and recreation. The environment and recreation are too critical to Colorado's brand not to have robust objectives. A strong Colorado environment is critical to the economy and way of life. And it talks about having plans, watershed protection plans, across the state. These plans will address a variety of concerns, including pre- and post-fire mitigation. Senate Bill 7 is one mechanism to start to deal with the pre-fire mitigation. We all just received just last week the 2015 report on the health of Colorado's forests. That came to us from the Colorado State Forest Service, CSU. On page 7 of that report, it talks to us about harvesting dead trees achieves immediate benefits in recreation and tourism, wood products manufacturing, employment in our local communities, and competitiveness of Colorado wood products here and in national markets. But immediacy is crucial to utilizing and recovering product value in these forests, as over time the wood deteriorates to an extent it can no longer be safely harvested or profitably processed into wood products. Again, the biomass is taking what is not valuable timber for the timber industry, but moving some of that biomass out. Finally, I'd like to point to a white paper that was put out by the Association for Fire Ecology, International Association of Wildland Fire, and the Nature Conservancy. Obviously, the Nature Conservancy is a very forward-looking conservation organization. And on page 10 of that white paper, it says incentives and allowances should be incorporated in the renewable energy market as an economical solution to the disposal of non-merchantable biomass, e.g. hazardous fuels. That's exactly what Senate Bill 7 does. It takes something that is otherwise a hazardous fuel, turns it into something productive, like electricity. It helps produce jobs in the small rural areas of Colorado, and I urge your support of Senate Bill 7. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 7? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 7. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 7 is adopted. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1008?
House Bill 1008 by Representatives Winter and Becker J. and Senators Cook and Heath, concerning authorization for the Department of Transportation to designate an area on a roadway not otherwise lane for traffic or for use by commercial vehicles designed to transport 16 passengers or more that are operated by a governmental entity or governmental-owned business that transports the general public or by a contractor on behalf of such an entity or government-owned business.
Senator Heath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We move House Bill 10008, and there is no committee report.
To the bill. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During the planning phase, this is one of the oops moments, but during the planning phase of the bus rapid transit on US 36, it was assumed by the planners that the shoulders of the buses would be used to ensure rapid transit on the corridor. The 36 corridor was thus built, these shoulders were built to accommodate buses on the shoulders. However, later, this is the oops moment, it was discovered that a statutory cleanup would be required to allow for this. And so this is what the bill does. It allows for the buses to be driven on the shoulders of 36. Several other states do it. Many other states allow it to ease congestion. So I would support and ask for an aye vote on this bill.
Senator Heath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one further comment. In the House, the concern arose as to what discretion, if any, the bus drivers had to go on the shoulder. And they added a clause to the bill that basically allows the bus driver at his or her discretion to decide whether or not to use the shoulder. And I think with that change, the opposition went away with that concern, and I certainly wholeheartedly endorse what they did, so I would ask for an aye vote as well.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1008? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1008. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the House Bill 1008 is adopted. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 123?
Senate Bill 123 by Senator Lundberg and Representative Singer, concerning the free access for high occupancy vehicles, high occupancy vehicle, and high occupancy toll lanes on state highways, and in connection with prohibiting the Department of Transportation, the High Performance Transportation Enterprise, from requiring a vehicle owner to use a switchable transponder or other device in order to travel in a high occupancy vehicle on such a lane without paying a toll.
Majority Leader Shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the committee lay over Senate Bill 123 to February 25th.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 123 to February 25th. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 123 will be laid over to February 25th. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1095?
House Bill 1095 by Representative McCain and Senator Crowder concerning health insurance coverage for early refills of prescription eye drops.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring before you House Bill 1095. It's a good
Senator,
bill.
would
It's a
you
simple
please move your bill?
There's no opposition, so I ask for your support on this bill. Thank you very much.
Senator, would you please move your bill?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move House Bill 1095
Is there,
and ask for a favorable vote.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we heard this bill in the Health Committee, and there was a lot of concern about whether insurers were making it unreasonably hard for patients to get refills on eye drops that would often run out in less than 30 days. And there was some question during committee as to why the health plans were not there. And I was just asked if I would clarify that they weren't there because they actually support the bill. They said in most cases, if patients will ask them, they will give them the extra bottles anyway, so they didn't feel like this was imposing a new mandate on them, but they are happy to make the policy clearer by supporting this bill. And I mostly bring it to your attention because I think very often patients assume that insurers won't do certain things and providers as well, but I would encourage them always to reach out to their insurer and ask for the accommodation that they need because they may be surprised at the answer they're given. And so I too rise in support of this bill.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1095? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1095. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1095 is adopted. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 125?
Senate Bill 125 by Senator Holbert and Representative Kraft concerning the governance of credit unions in connection therewith authorizing the appointment of an audit committee and of a supervisory committee and allowing the reasonable compensation of an officer, director, or committee member for his or her service to the credit union.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Senate Bill 125 in the Finance Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the Finance Committee, we did clarify that this would apply to an officer, director, or committee member. Actually, we struck original language, officer, director, or committee member, and substituted director. The intent of the bill is to allow credit unions, if they so choose, to compensate people who serve on their board of directors, and the drafter realized that we had language in there that included people who probably are compensated already. So we narrowed that to director, asked for an aye vote on the committee report.
Is there any discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before the body is the approval of the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. Senator Holbert, to the bill, there is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read Amendment L004?
Amendment L004 to Senate Bill 125 by Senator Holbert, amend printed bill page 1, line.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move L004.
Thank you, Senator Holbert. Please explain your amendment.
Thank you. Members, I asked for this bill to come off of the consent calendar, really at the request of the drafter, and I'm grateful for his attention. If you look at the first page of the bill, lines 104 and 105, you'll see the same language that I mentioned earlier that we struck out of the bill, but the reasonable compensation of an officer, director, or committee member, and this amendment, L004, would just narrow that down to director and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 004? Seeing none, the question before the body is the adoption of Amendment 4. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendment 4 is adopted. Senator Holbert, to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 125, again, seeks to allow credit unions to compensate, if they so choose, members of their board of directors. I want to thank so much the folks who represent the Independent Bankers Association of Colorado and also the Colorado Bankers Association, along with the Credit Union Association, for their cooperation and discussion leading up to the introduction of this bill. Sometimes legislation involving those financial service entities can become contentious. And I'm just grateful that, that we were able to find a way to allow reasonable compensation of those directors in credit union environments, and to do so without opposition in committee, and ask for an aye vote.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the bill sponsor for bringing this bill. I have a few questions and wanted to just ask to get a better understanding of the concept behind the bill. I understand the issue with the audit committee. I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of the management, financial management of a credit union. But I'm looking at the bill and trying to understand the purpose for compensating board members who serve for a credit union.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the question. Directors in credit union environments are not presently allowed to be compensated. They do spend a great deal of time working and acting on behalf in a fiduciary capacity as a board member. As a credit union member myself, when the Credit Union Association came and asked me, my response was, I don't mind at all if the credit union that my wife and I happen to be members of, if that credit union can achieve quality boards of directors without paying them, that's okay. But if they choose to pay those directors, I don't see harm for me as a member, and I haven't heard anyone who's a member of a credit union coming to say that they shouldn't do this. I think that those people who give their professional time to serve on those boards, if it serves the members and the credit union as a whole, serves their best interest, that they should have the option to compensate them reasonably. And that was one of the bits of compromise discussion that occurred between the different banker associations and the credit union association, is not to have outlandish, unreasonable compensation, but to allow some compensation for those people who serve on the boards. Ask for an aye vote.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the senator from Douglas County for helping me understand that. I'm trying to understand the second part of that, which is how reasonable compensation is defined, and specifically in terms of board membership. How many board members are there, and then what is reasonable compensation? How is that defined in the statute?
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this would really fall under the supervision of the Department of Financial Services at DORA to be able to work with the credit unions in Colorado. We are not trying to define those things in statute, but allow the Division of Financial Services to understand the members of the audit committee, to understand that compensation in each individual credit union. I think that that works better for the community of credit unions, the Division of Financial Services, and probably best for us, so that we're not coming back to revisit that in statute over time.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my last question in this vein is, the way the bill reads is that the credit union would define the pay, and then, as you've indicated, Department of Regulatory Agencies would have some ability to determine reasonableness. But when it says the credit union, who at the credit union? Is it the CEO of the credit union would determine board pay, or is that a board decision, or is it flexible? Who's making that pay decision?
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having been in an environment managed by a board of directors, I would say ultimately those people are in charge and are accountable. Being a member of a credit union, they do not have customers, they have members, and members of each credit union, I think, would have transparency with the board of directors and a choice as to whether they would remain members of that credit union. But my experience in that credit union environment is that the board members, the staff of that credit union, are always looking to the best interest of the members. And again, as a member of a credit union, I think it would be fine if the credit union to which my wife and I belong as members, if they chose to compensate their directors reasonably, we could look to those decisions of that board and make a decision as to whether they made a good decision, and we could vote with our feet and go to a different credit union or not. And the credit union that I belong to, I would absolutely trust them and their board to make a reasonable decision for that member-based environment.
Is there further discussion? There is an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Amendment 5.
Amendment L005 to Senate Bill 125 by Senator Ulibarri.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L005.
To the amendment, Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, you've just heard a back and forth, and one that was illustrative for me and one I think that's important to the contents of this bill. Credit unions are functionally different than banks. Credit unions are chartered as nonprofits, specifically to help those who are economically disadvantaged. That's why they're usually community-rooted and governed by a board of directors. Their interest is actually serving their membership, not in profit. So that's a functional difference between a bank and a credit union. And so when thinking about the management of those institutions, there was an intentional effort to ensure that board directors of those institutions designed for the economically disadvantaged aren't abused in this scenario. To that end, I think it's very important that we set the limitations on what the pay compensation is for those executives who have the ability to set their own pay based on this bill, that we actually limit what that might look like. The way that L005 reads, it says, for the purposes of this subsection 3, reasonable compensation means compensation determined on an hourly basis not to exceed the average hourly basis for all credit union employees. Although I appreciate the comment that credit union board of directors would do right by their customers and that the members could vote them out of office, that's not the case in what we've seen in other states. And let me just tell you what it looks like when these individuals have been able to vote on their own pay. At an Indiana credit union, there was a board member who received an annual stipend of $93,109 for working 2 hours a week on board business. Let me say that again. That a board member at an Indiana credit union received an annual stipend of $93,109 for working 2 hours a week on board business. A board treasurer at a Pennsylvania credit union made $65,836 annually for spending 4 hours a week on board work. At a Rhode Island credit union, the board chair made $39,100 for 8 hours a week of board work. I don't understand why we would allow the board of directors of a financial institution to set their own pay and say that that's a good thing. I think we need to define what reasonable compensation is to protect those economically vulnerable populations that credit unions were designed to serve. Because if you start talking about a 10-member board and they're all making $100,000, that's a tax. That's a fee, that's a tax. That money has to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from the membership. And I don't think we should be leveling this kind of regressive tax on those consumers. This was set up intentionally, and many states continue to fight with this issue. I want to read something that came from a report from the Credit Union Times. It actually came from the CEO of a credit union in Minnesota, and I think it's just really important to say. He said, from my perspective as a CEO, if you compensate them, will you get people who are just in it for the money? And this is coming from Richard Odenthal, who's the president and CEO of the Central Minnesota Credit Union. He says, I've worked in the banking world too, and I've seen how that works. Sometimes those paid board positions are patronage positions more than anything else. I don't think we should be setting up a system of patronage to have high-priced board of directors making financial decisions that they are benefiting from, and that they've set their own pay. It doesn't seem compatible with the way that we would ensure that we're protecting the middle class and the economically vulnerable. So I ask for an aye vote on L005.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm grateful to my colleague, the amendment sponsor, for his passion and his concern for members of credit unions. But I do ask for a no vote. I believe that the Division of Financial Services and the Audit Committee of the credit union will provide transparency for members in the credit unions. Again, as a credit union member, I have a very high level of confidence in my credit union and their board of directors. If they were to compensate directors unreasonably, they are certainly at risk of losing members. The members would certainly weigh in on that point. And again, I believe that the way that this bill is structured, there's adequate transparency for the members of the credit union. And with all due respect, I ask for a no vote on L005.
Is there further discussion on Amendment 5? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment 5. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The noes have it. The amendment is lost. Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 125? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 125. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 125 is passed. Majority Leader shuffle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion before us is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee will rise and report.
We'll come back to order. Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee has met, had a number of bills under consideration. Mr. Majors, would you please read the report?
February 23, 2016, Mr. President, your committee holds the reports that in consideration of the following tax bills being a second reading thereof makes following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 34 is amended, Senate Bill 7 is amended, Senate Bill 125 is amended, passed on second reading in order and gross placed on counter for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1008, House Bill 1095 passed on second reading in order revised placed on counter for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 80 laid over until February 24, 2016, retaining its place on the calendar. Senate Bill 123 laid over until February 25, 2016, retaining its place on the calendar.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the report.
We have an amendment. Mr. Majors, would you please read Committee of the Whole Amendment 1?
Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 125. Senator Ulibarri moved to amend the report of the committee.
Ulibarri.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment 1.
Please continue.
This is to indicate that on Senate Bill 125, the amendment I offered did pass. I think it's important to acknowledge that reasonable compensation should be given to the Board of Directors, but we should have a limit on what that looks like. And so what I had offered in the amendment was that the hourly rate should not exceed the average hourly basis for all other credit union employees. So you're not putting a huge fee on the backs of middle-income families and low-income families that use credit unions. And this is designed to prevent the abuses that I talked about in Pennsylvania, where you have hundreds of thousands of dollars going out in compensation for boards of directors for credit unions. And I respectfully ask for an aye vote on 001.
Senator Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I respectfully ask for a no vote. I don't know what the statute looked like or how credit unions operated in other states. But here in Colorado, we have the Division of Regulatory Authority, or regulatory agencies, and under that, the Division of Financial Services. We have an audit committee in each one of these credit unions providing information disclosure to the Division of Financial Services. And my experience, again, in a credit union environment, we would have a very high level of transparency between the board, the management of a credit union, and the members of those credit unions. So again, I don't know what might have happened and how the law was structured in other states, but I think in this state that this is an unnecessary level of control, and that we should allow the members and the directors of each credit union decide the compensation that is reasonable for that environment. Ask for a no vote.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 125. Are there any no votes? Mr. Majority Leader. Senator Holbert. Senator Hill. Senator Scott. Senator Woods. Senator Neville. Senator Cook. Senator Lambert. Excuse me, Senator Lumberg, correction. Senator Grantham. Senator Lambert. Please have the President. With 17 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 is lost. Mr. Majors, please read Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill. I'm waiting for it to come on the screen. Senate Bill 34.
Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 34. Senator Sheffield moved and then report the Committee of the Whole show that Senate Bill 34 as amended was laid over to the General Orders Counter on February 24, 2016 and taking its place on the calendar.
Majority Leader Sheffield.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 34. Colleagues, this amendment shall forever be known as the Flag on the Play Amendment. We had a situation when we were passing Senate Bill 34. There was a flurry of activity with amendments and ultimately the final vote. In the midst of all that, there was a request that a fiscal note, an additional fiscal note was requested to reflect the amendment, and the bill inadvertently passed while the fiscal note paperwork was being turned in. As you all know, under our rules, where an additional fiscal note is requested, the bill cannot pass seconds until that has been obtained. I've conferred with leadership, the bill sponsors, the amendment sponsors, and we all agree that the proper action is to pass this Committee of the Whole, which will reflect that Senate Bill 34 was amended and then laid over to February 24. Ask for an aye vote.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. And in the football analogy, the challenge has to come before the next play, but I am indeed supporting the cow and ask for your yes vote.
Is there further discussion? Will there be a coin toss? Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 34 is adopted. So the motion before us is the adopted Committee of the Whole report. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Senate Bill 7 is amended. Senate Bill 125 is amended, passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1008, House Bill 1095 passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 34 as amended, Senate Bill 80 laid over until February 24th and retaining their place on the calendar. Senate Bill 123 laid over until February 25th and retaining its place on the calendar. Consideration of governor's appointment consent calendar. Mr. Majors, would you please read the appointments?
Member of the Transportation Commission for a term expiring July 1st, 2019, Catherine Hall, Grand Junction, Colorado, serves as Commissioner from the 7th Transportation District appointed. Members of the Colorado Educational and Cultural Facilities Authority Board of Directors for a term expiring June 30th, 2016, Margaret Henry of Brighton, Colorado, Republican, and occasioned by the resignation of Brent Jared Klein of Denver, Colorado, a Republican appointed for term expiring June 30th, 2018, Samuel James Todd of Broomfield, Colorado, a Republican, and occasioned by the resignation of Patrick M. Brady of Fort Collins, Colorado, a Republican appointed for terms expiring June 30, 2019, William Carl Sandin of Colorado Springs, Colorado, Republican, reappointed. Cheryl Denise Cohen Vader of Denver, Colorado, and unaffiliated, reappointed.
Majority Leader Sheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate confirm the governor's appointments listed on the consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar, which includes a member of the Transportation Commission and members of the Colorado Education and Cultural Facilities Authority Board of Directors.
Is there further discussion on any of the appointments on the governor's appointments consent calendar? Seeing none, with 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Catherine Hall is appointed as a member of the Transportation Commission. With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, Margaret Henry, Samuel Todd, William Sandin, and Cheryl Cohen Vader are appointed as members of the Colorado Educational and Cultural Facilities Authority Board of Directors. Announcements. Senator Baumgartner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. Members, something that we're trying to do here, one of our state troopers' wives, Libby Van Zant, her husband is Trooper Van Zant. He's on the executive State Patrol executive security team here. His wife has been diagnosed with leukemia. And so what we're trying to do, as well as the House, is trying to get enough people, and we'll start a sheet going around. If we can get at least 20 people to sign up, Bonfils will come here to the Capitol with a bus, and that way we don't have to worry about traveling, to go somewhere. They are going to have a blood drive, but it's out at the Colorado State Patrol office in Golden, and it's on April the 20th, and I'm not sure what day that is, but I'm sure it's a day during the session, and it would be kind of difficult for us to go out there. So what we're trying to do with here in the Senate and the House is to get at least 20 people that will give blood, and if we can get that done, then there's a code that they will give, and when they receive that blood, they get it at a reduced cost. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we can get enough people to give blood here for that trooper's wife. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We'll have a sign-up sheet available.
Not yet. That'll come tomorrow.
The sign-up sheet will come tomorrow. Thank you, Senator. Committee reports.
February 22nd, 2016, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following Senate Bill 21 be amended as follows. Also amended before the Committee of the Whole favorable recommendation. February 22nd, 2016, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following Senate Bill 106 be amended as follows, and also amended before the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. February 22nd, 2016, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following Senate Bill 101 be postponed indefinitely. February 22nd, 2016, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends following Senate Bill 114 be postponed indefinitely. February 22nd, 2016, Mr. President, the Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs has had under consideration as that hearing on the following appointments and recommends the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Members of the Colorado Board of Veterans Affairs effective June 30th, 2015 for terms expiring June 30th, 2019. Christopher Michael Holden of Colorado Springs, Colorado, Republican, and a veteran who has been honorably released or separated from the Armed Forces of the United States, reappointed. Holly K. Parker, Colorado, a Democrat, and a veteran who has been honorably released or separated from the Armed Forces of the United States, appointed.
Message from the House.
February 23rd, 2016, Mr. President, the House has passed on third reading transmitted advisory statute House Bill 1189. The House has passed on third reading transmitted advisory statute House Bill 1063 as amended, and House Bill 1106 as amended. The House has passed on third reading returns to with Senate Bills 22, 50, and 4. The House has adopted and returns to with Senate Joint Memorial 4. The House has voted to concur in Senate amendments to House Bill 1069 and has repassed the bill as so amended.
Message from the Reviser.
February 23rd, 2016, we herewith transmit without comment House Bill 1189 without comment as amended House Bills 1063 and 1106.
Announcements. Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder about, you probably already know that it's the American Council of Engineering Companies Day today, and you can serve your palate at Palates today by having lunch with them over there. So please remember to attend their luncheon today. Thank you.
Continuing announcements to include the Doctor of the Day is here. Majority Leader Scheffel.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you're not feeling well, there is a Doctor of the Day. Dr. Budnezik is here. If you need help finding where the good doctor is, just contact one of us, and you can be directed accordingly, but you may want to take advantage of that. In addition, the President has asked me to make a special announcement that the Colorado Film Office invites all of the General Assembly to take part in an advance screening in a film called Heaven Sent. This film was filmed in Colorado, so if you want to see your film credits at work, this would be a good opportunity to do that. It's going to be held February 25th at 7 p.m. at the Sci Film Center at 2510 East Colfax Avenue. Again, Heaven Sent, February 25th at 7 p.m. If you want more information, see one of us and we'll get you the details, but it might be a good time there. With that, in the absence of any further announcements, Mr. President, I move that the Senate adjourn to 9 a.m. February 24th.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The Senate will be adjourned until 9 a.m. Wednesday, February 24th.